Good afternoon, and welcome to the UpSkill Works Forum series that engages business leaders, education and community leaders, policymakers, and leading thinkers on key workforce issues our region and nation confront. I'm Peter Beard, and I lead the Greater Houston Partnership's UpSkill Houston initiative that serves as a backbone to bring together employers and business leaders, educational leadership, community-based organizations, and the public workforce system to strengthen the talent pipelines our region's employers need and to help Houstonians connect to good jobs that increase opportunity and prosperity. As we approach Labor Day, it is important to celebrate the important contributions that workers make to Houston's region's strength, prosperity, and well-being. Today is the first of a special two-part Labor Day UpSkill Works Forum series focused on how the pandemic has impacted our region's workers and how we can help smooth the way for our neighbors who are striving to get back on track. And now just a few housekeeping details. All attendees are muted and your videos are turned off for the entirety of the webinar. Please do not use the chat function for questions and answers. This will not be moderated for questions. The chat function should be used to connect with our production team if you're having any technical issues. If you have any questions or comments, you should use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens. This will be moderated throughout today's session and forwarded to the speakers. I'd also like to acknowledge the sponsors of the 2021 UpSkill Works Forum series. The Greater Houston Partnership and UpSkill Houston would like to thank our forum sponsors, Accenture, Silver Eagle Distributors, Winstead PC, HCA Houston Healthcare, Houston Community College, Lone Star College, the Merrick family of companies, Mustang Cat, San Jacinto College, Dow, and the Western Governors University, WGU, Texas. Thank you to our sponsors for your support for our UpSkill Works Forum series. I'd like to introduce right now Kiana Bourdreau, who will be introducing our sessions today that is focused on understanding today's job seekers' insights into motivations and anxieties. Kiana serves as the Human Resources Director at Silver Eagle Distributors Houston. As many of us know, Silver Eagle distributes a broad selection of domestic and import brands, including craft beers, spirits, and several non-alcoholic beverages, including water. Kiana is responsible for more than 1,100 employees, and Silver Eagle is a great community partner and has an active corporate social responsibility program. Welcome, Kiana. It's a pleasure to have you here today, and the partnership appreciates your leadership and Silver Eagle's support for this UpSkill Works Forum series.
Thank you, Peter. Silver Eagle is proud to be a partner with UpSkill Houston and supporting these virtual sessions on important workforce topics in the Houston region. Today, we will be discussing some important research about individuals who have been displaced from the workforce by the pandemic. Jen Shafer will be sharing insights she's gathered through interviews with 28 individuals who are looking for better career opportunities as a result of the pandemic. From these interviews, she's created 4 personas that are representative of these individuals. These personas should help inform education and community partners on how to better serve individuals and employee partners who are interested in recruiting more diverse populations. Jen Shafer is a Rice University graduate and a master's fellow in the Integrated Design and Management program at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Before heading to MIT, Jen worked in the private sector and has deep experience in people strategy and human capital. She worked for Estee Lauder Companies in New York City and Deloitte Consulting here in Houston. After Jen shares the personas, she will engage in a short discussion with Greg Hambrick, CEO and founder of Fast Forward Works, and Fred Oswald, professor of industrial organizational psychology and workforce expert at Rice University. And yes, Jen did study under Professor Oswald. This discussion should provide insights as to how workforce personas can help us better serve these individuals. This session will conclude with a panel of community partners facilitated by Amanda McMillan, CEO of United Way of Greater Houston, discussing the trends they are seeing with their clients. Amanda and Helen Stagg, CEO of Change Happens in the Third Ward, and Matt Killian, COO of WorkFaith Connections. Both Helen and Matt work with individuals who are looking for better employment opportunities. This is sure to be a great and insightful conversations, and I am looking forward to hearing more about how we can better serve individuals who have been impacted by the pandemic. Excuse me. Before I turn it over to Jen, I want to remind the audience to please share any questions or observations in the Q&A function. I am now going to turn it over to Jen so she can share her work with us.
Great, thank you so much, Kiana, and thank you all for being here today. It is such a thrill to be speaking to the Houston community again, and as Kiana mentioned, I have a connection to Houston and Bryce, and so it's great to be here. As we begin, I would like everyone to start by thinking of a time when you felt lonely, a time when you needed support and you didn't know where it was going to come from, or if it was ever going to come. During the conversations that I had with Houstonians this summer who have either recently lost their jobs or are in the middle of the job hunt, I heard a lot of stories about people who felt alone. And while it may not be possible to meet everyone's needs at all times, I know that it's great for all of us to be here together with this shared purpose of helping to make sure that people don't feel alone in a time of struggle. So why don't we hear from a few of the individuals that I spoke to, so that you understand these complex and really engaging perspectives.
Just for someone to give me a chance, because I think what they do is, I do have an MBA, but I've not even utilized it. I graduated in 2008 and decided to really focus on family and my family, rearing my family. It's like I'm getting back into the job mode. So you know that saying that it's either you become a mom or you become a career woman. So it's really hard for me to get back, I think, based on that. As what they'll do is look at my resume and say, oh, you have all this educational knowledge and yet still you don't have much in terms of job experience to match the qualifications.
It's hard because they can't be here by themselves, and I don't want to put them in daycare because of COVID. So I'm just juggling a lot. But hopefully they go back in August, go back to school. That'll help me out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of times and that's like, even though it's time is, just step back, take a breath, and then go back into it, because I have put over 200 applications in last year and over 300 applications this year. And so I wasn't just one that was just riding the system of unemployment or anything. I was trying and spending hours every day trying to find a job.
I've forgotten how they say this adage back home. My mom will always say, there is this other one though, this is one I always remember. My mom will always say, if you ask questions, you will not get missing. So if you're walking on the road and you're lost, don't get shy of asking questions. Mm-hmm. Ask. Somebody may know where you're going to and they will give you directions. Mm-hmm. So she always says that.
Our goal this summer was to better understand these users, these users who have a wide range of challenges and just need a little support. We used qualitative research methods and really focused on human-centered design, which really just means starting from the perspective of the user of a service and focusing on their needs to then drive the entire design process. As we started to think about this mission and how we would accomplish it, there were a few key research questions that emerged during some ideation and planning sessions with Peter and the team at the Greater Houston Partnership. Who might be using these services, these job support services and initiatives? How can we serve them? What is their comfort level with LinkedIn? As this is a major tool that is kind of on the horizon of maybe being integrated more consistently within these services. And where do people hear about jobs? So all of my conversations with these 28 individuals focused on those 4 areas. Now, in particular, the interviews were also built around questions about career goals. What does success look like? What do you need from a job? What is preventing you from being able to keep a job in terms of interpersonal challenges, structural challenges, logistics, and messaging? Where do you hear about jobs? Where do you get your information? Whose ear do you have, and who has your ear, and how is information distributed within communities? From these questions and from this analysis, there are 4 key personas that kind of emerged from this research. And I'd like to start first by telling you a little bit about each of these personas. And then at the end, I'd like to also kind of think through some ideas of how personas and this type of work could be useful to you and could apply to organizations within the city of Houston. At the end, when we move to the Q&A portion, I would also be very happy to discuss more how we kind of came to these 4. So without further ado, the 4 are persona number 1, fresh faces. Her name is Selena. Persona number 2, the Mayday mom, Connie. Persona number 3, Houston strong, that's Fern. And persona number 4, wise and worried. His name is Raymond. So let's get to know Selena. Selena works as an X-ray technician. She enjoys her job to some extent, but she really doesn't feel like she's using her full training and knowledge. She is a 21-year-old Hispanic woman who immigrated to the US when she was 9 years old. So outside of work, Selena is very close to her parents and her grandmother, whom she lives with. Because of this kind of big move to the US at a young age, there were times when she was very insecure and self-conscious about speaking English, although at this point, she has kind of made it over a lot of those challenges. And if we want to think about, what might Selena say? What are her biggest concerns? She might say things like, I don't understand this paperwork. Can somebody explain this to me? What are my options? Selena has a lot of concerns about really the even administrative aspect of finding a job and keeping a job, because she doesn't necessarily have the support at home to be able to have that guidance to propel her through the process. As I mentioned, she's a 21-year-old Hispanic woman, and she's in healthcare, and she has some education, but is interested in more. Now that we know Selena a bit more, what are her goals? What are her challenges? She would like to pursue a passion. Part of that involves discovering what her passions are. She'd like to purchase a vehicle, continue to contribute to the family income. She'd like to find a romantic partner. She wants to be a part of a team and in a collaborative environment. And some of the challenges that Selena faces are about indecision. She doesn't feel like she necessarily gets the same levels of respect as her peers because she doesn't have a lot of experience. She is employed, but she's actually underemployed and has trouble getting enough shifts. So that's another concern for her. She is just coming off the heels of a lot of remote learning, which was also very draining. And then of course there is immigration status and other concerns related to her background. So now what can we do for Selena? There are kind of a few different phases of services that could be provided for Selena. So in the immediate near term, job pathway guidance, that administrative support that she's been looking for in job onboarding, opportunity youth programs, even LinkedIn profile advice and improvement. And then in the longer term, maybe transparent information about salary progression and how making a lateral move now might affect her longer term earning potential, some mentorship, some financial coaching, which will help her to get that independence she craves for transportation, to get her own vehicle and eventually have her own place. So now that we've gotten to know Selena a little bit and what motivates her and what her challenges are, let's hear from Selena.
I guess I was expecting something different whenever I joined. Because I didn't, like, as students, you don't really see everything, like what they actually have to do, which is not bad. It's just not what I'm looking for, like for long term.
Now I'd like to move on from Selena and discuss the other 3 personas that we got to know this summer. Next is Connie. Connie is a mother with young children. She had some education prior to having her children, but then left the workforce for a while and now is employed, but also underemployed in a job that she does not find to be engaging or stimulating. She financially has some concerns with kind of financial stability, but she did pay off some credit card debt last year. She's working to continue to improve her credit and would like to buy a house. Connie might say things like, I'm pushing paper, not making a difference. I put in all of this time and all of this effort, and I am juggling so many different priorities at once. And yet the thing that I have to spend the most time doing, which is working at this, this virtual customer service job, it's not bringing me fulfillment. So Connie is a 32-year-old Asian American woman, and she also has a high school degree along with some college and some advanced degree work. Now I'd like to move on to number 3. Persona number 3, Houston Strong. This is Fern. Fern has been through a lot. She lived through a horrific car accident about 10 years ago. And since this traumatic event, she's been changed physically and psychologically. She's required a lot of support and a lot of therapy, but she is very resilient, very Houston Strong. She previously was working in an administrative job, but then she decided that she really wanted to move in a completely different direction that would bring her more happiness and fulfillment. So she found an organization that would help her get her welding certification. Fern is a white woman. She's 44. She actually has a bachelor's degree that she got prior to this, this traumatic car accident. And she does now work in the field of welding, but she sadly lost her position due to COVID. Now, Fern, with this kind of PTSD and traumatic background, she has struggled to always feel comfortable seeking out mental health services. So she might say things like, I was scared to seek mental health support. I struggled to ask for help. Sometimes I still feel like I'll be stigmatized. So now with Fern, there are a number of other ways that we could support her. We'll get to that a little bit later. Let's move on now to number 4. I would like you to meet Raymond. Raymond is wise and worried persona number 4. He's a father, a grandfather, active in his church community, likes to receive mentorship, also likes to be a mentor. He had a very stable career and been a permanent employee in the oil and gas industry until recently, where he found himself in kind of an unfamiliar position of being back on the job market and realized the job market had completely shifted beneath his feet. He is employed again after this long job hunt, but he doesn't really feel like he's able to use those project manager skills that he honed during all of those years in oil and gas. Raymond has said, I was really proud of my last job as a project manager in oil and gas. And since I was let go, I've been too embarrassed to update my job status on LinkedIn. He was very, very proud and identified in a lot of ways with his career. And so this is really a time of recalibration, and also he is seeking some stability as he is a 58-year-old. And while he has a lot of education, he is not looking to be back on the job market again in these last few years before retirement. I know that that was a lot to process, and these are very complex individuals. And now I'd like to move into the discussion of how can we use these tools? How can we learn as much as possible from these personas? And I would also like to add, I don't see this as an end of work, but really the beginning of a lot more work. So where do we go from here? First, I would just like to point out that there are often a lot of misconceptions about how many conversations or interviews are necessary to yield meaningful work. And this graph here is really just meant to be encouraging that in about 8 or 9 interviews, you can actually gain as much information as you would in a 5 or 7 or 10 person focus group. And so as we think about how personas might be used, I also want to encourage everyone to remember that it doesn't have to be a 3-month full-time study to learn a little bit more about our users. It can really be some very strategic and poignant conversations. So how can we use these tools like personas? What does this actually look like in the normal workflow? So first, training and simulations. It is proven in all different industries, and executive coaching, in the military even, that simulations are a great learning tool, and personas can be very useful in talking through scenarios and really envisioning what's happening and what you can do. Goal setting and performance management. So as we think about coaching and how we are always all trying to get better at our jobs and serving our communities, how can we use these conversations about users to drive that process? Service design. So that's number 3. How can we incorporate all of the breadth and complexity of these personas and maybe try each on for size? And that goes with strategic planning as well. And then finally, communications and marketing and user journeys, which I'd actually like to dive into a little bit deeper in these last couple of minutes. So this is an example of how thinking through this persona like Selena could help with a messaging strategy. So now after discussing her needs, her motivations, we might use a marketing message like the one to the right for Selena, which is, we know it's difficult to find a job. We can help you articulate your value and explain what you'll bring, the value that you'll bring to the workplace, even if you don't have years and years of experience. And then to the left here, these were some ideas that came up in our actual planning sessions for how we might speak to a persona like Selena. So how can we speak about real opportunities, possibility, and independence, mentorship? Additionally, something else that came up throughout these conversations was a variety of different channels in which people learned about jobs. So as we had started this project, and as I worked with Peter and the team to think about, you know, where do we anticipate that people will say they hear about jobs? These are some of the channels that came up in those conversations. And during the interviews, there were so many additional channels that, while maybe no single additional resource here will be entirely unfamiliar, it really does beg the question of how consistently are clients and users hearing about this full breadth of opportunity and resources, and maybe how can knowledge sharing even between organizations kind of facilitate that, and then how, from the employer perspective, how can we make sure that the opportunities are actually reaching people where they are? The final thing that I wanted to bring up is user journeys. So another key way that personas can really be useful in the day-to-day is to think about in phases how this persona would move through a process, what the steps would be, and most importantly, along the bottom, how they might feel during each step and what might be most stressful. And this can be a really great way to uncover pain points and to focus in on those rather than just trying to improve a process at a high level. So I wanted to thank all of the organizations who supported in helping to connect me to clients and users for these interviews. I really appreciate it. And now I believe we can, I'll hand it over to Greg. Looking forward to discussing more.
Thank you, Jen. That was really, really good. I hope everybody got a lot out of that. We'll be talking about your presentation here a little bit more in a second. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Hambrick. I'm the founder of Fast Forward Works and also a member of the UpSkills Houston Executive Committee. A little housekeeping here, just to repeat what Peter said earlier. If you have questions, which I hope you do, please put those in the Q&A function. So one of the things I wanted to say here to Jen is I really think that your work has helped us humanize the very people that we're trying to help. I think when we can more fully understand that those folks relate to their daily challenges, we can do a better job of helping them. From time to time, most of us tend to identify large groups of underserved individuals statistically, and sometimes we fail to see them as the very individuals they are and appreciate the barriers that they really have to self-sufficiency. My guess is that a number of these people represented by these personas are part of over 40% of Americans who don't have $500 in liquid funds to take care of unexpected expenses. And I think it's important for all of us to remember, you know, not only that statistic, but also that in Houston, we have several 100,000 families, not individuals, but families who pay more than 50% of their income in rent.
when you take those two statistics and you couple them together, I think, and then you look at these personas of these people, I hope it'll make it all a little bit easier for us to be empathetic and place ourselves in their shoes as we try to, more thoroughly, help them achieve some kind of self-sufficiency through vocation. I'm really honored right now to introduce our next guest and my very good friend, Dr. Fred Oswald from Rice University. In addition to being a professor of industrial organizational psychology and a workforce expert, Fred leads the Organization and Workforce Laboratory, an acronym is AL, which is quite a hoot, at Rice that explores the future of workforce as it relates to employer performance and academic success. So welcome, Fred, and I suspect you might have some insights into the career motivations and interests of these personas. Can you help us maybe better understand how we can work with these individuals represented by these personas and coach and guide them to better occupational and career pathways?
Hey, Greg, thanks so much for the introduction. And Jen, thanks for all your great work presented here. I think you did a great job answering this sort of question. I'll just simply reflect on it and say that really understanding personas as a combination of factors that a person faces in their job and career development is really what's critical here. I think we all know, we want to, sometimes we have to isolate part of the system to address it. Like people need interviewing skills, or they need transportation, money to ride the bus, and so on. And those important components are obviously necessary, but people are the system of those components. People are the profile of those components, and that's really what you highlighted. And Greg, what you accentuated in your comment. Actually, you kind of stole some of my comments. I was taking notes here as Jen was presenting, and one of my bullet points, I'm looking at it here, was actually the first bullet point. It was understanding and empathy, because basically, as a researcher, what we do in our lab, we're not wearing lab coats, by the way. We're actually collecting organizational data, me and my grad students and organizational partners. And, we really are looking past the data, really understanding the context before we collect data, so that, start knowing what numbers mean, and then stay engaged throughout the context of that sort of work, so that when you use the data to inform decisions, you really know where it's taking place. And I'm sharing that because I think that that's relevant in applied context, not just research, but once you learn something from the research, how do you implement it? How do you implement with the understanding, going back to that point about the combination of components, the profiles that people have, right? You've got people, I won't do justice to all the personas here, but you do have people who they are discovering their talents in themselves as they explore and over time. And they are, there are various motivators for why you do that exploration. It can be out of intellectual interests, or some emotional, you get into fixing things that are electronic, and that becomes something you pursue, and it turns out to be job relevant as well. So there's that exploration. There's also the exploration on the employer side that has been entering conversations about how can we break the mold of checkboxes of qualifications, or resumes. What's the best way to get at understanding talent in a resume? Should there be other structures that are fair and standardized, but get at, sometimes interviews are non-standard. You forget things, and they can be problematic. And so how do you make interviews more fair, resumes more fair, to gather that sort of information and help? The point is to help employers explore the talents within applicants, not just applicants exploring talents to get at employment, right? It really is a two-way street. And judging from the audience here, I don't think I need to belabor the point further. I'll stop there. Greg, do you have other questions, or I could turn the tables on you because you've done a lot of work in occupational measurement to understand in a broad sense the talents that exist in people that don't necessarily appear on resumes, but do appear through systematic measurement. So,
yeah, well, thank you. I think one of the things I wanted to ask you, Fred, the work that you do, some of the work that I've done, and then this research that Jen has done. I'm curious for both of you to comment on. We have a really complex ecosystem here in Houston and most large cities with regard to workforce development, access to jobs, access to things that people need that are barriers to self-sufficiency, if you will. And I'm kind of curious, like, what do you think that we can do as this information that we have, the things that the research that Jen has done to sort of make that ecosystem flow better and make it work more efficiently, because right now it's very siloed. It's difficult for even people like us who are supposedly informed to kind of navigate it, much less some of these folks that represent these personas.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I would just start by saying one thing that I didn't mention about the personas is that, and I think both of you kind of touched on, it's a common language that can be used between and across organizations. And so even just having that consistency in terms of planning, and then also framing the type of research that Fred and his team would do. Sometimes it's really difficult to think about how to apply a certain finding or piece of data, but if it's applied in the context of kind of this empathy tool, this persona that you already have, I think it makes it a lot easier for people to ideate on possible solutions.
Thank you. Fred, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think just to reinforce that point, I think this goes back to understanding context and how, if you really want to understand whether an application is going to be effective, you really need to understand the context of the individual and what motivates them. And some of the work we do has to do with understanding what people's interests are, vocational and otherwise, what their skills are, whether that's measured through past experiences they've had, or I should say it's a supplement, self-reported skills on where they think they are in their trajectory. And then values, what kinds of things do you want in a job in terms of, some people desire greater autonomy or variety or career pathways, or salary. Various, beyond, obviously people want a living wage, but the point is there are a variety of needs people have, and that's a profile, and it changes. It's not a static thing. People change their preferences, and actually that's also part of this talent search on the part of applicants and employers, is that the fact it can change means that employers are always using new technology that redefines what a job is, and applicants are redefining themselves through education, through understanding what is out there and what is employable, but also what is meaningful to them. So Jen pointed to the meaningfulness aspect and the persona where jobs may not have been viewed as meaningful, and yet could be very well meaningful if it were reframed differently. A job in hospice care or a job in waste management may just seem like a job, but it's a super important job. And how that can be framed both in terms of an individual, but also in terms of a culture, like realizing when you apply for a job and get a job, you're working with other people that have the same mission. Sometimes we don't think about that when we're applying for a job. It's like a keyhole. You're just looking at the application. I think that's important too, as you back up a couple steps before applying and think about, what kind of environment am I going to be in, and how do I get there, right? That's really the key here, is how do I get there? And just on the fly here, well, I don't know if I can come up with them all, but I had, as Jen was speaking, I thought, gosh, here's a lot of words here that begin with T. People need time. They need teams. They need to develop the talent. And I'm sure there are other T's you can come up with, and you can, whoever does that can write a book on it. But
I can't think of another. I can't think of another T word, but I can think of an H word that I think that I'd like to kind of explore here with you all.
Oh, sorry, one more though. Sorry, one more. Tenacity. So one in the profile who was write tons of applications, asking tons of questions, that kind of tenacity, and tenacity about things around the context of a job that you need, like financial skills, Jen mentioned. So sorry, back from T to H.
We'll go to, thank you for that. The tenacity is important. The H word that I was thinking as you were speaking, and Janet, it occurred to me when I was listening to the voiceovers from the personas, is the word hope. And I'm curious, like in your research and in conducting these interviews with these 28 people, what do you think about hope, or the absence of, as it really relates to another barrier to people progressing through these channels into, again, a job, a career that can take care of their needs? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
In the conversations that I had, I would say people had a tremendous amount of hope, and maybe I should actually, more clearly say they worked to cultivate a tremendous amount of hope. So I think that kind of goes along with the concept of resilience to me, as something that that is developed with a lot of hard work, and is kind of like a sign that you've been through a lot. But yes, I would say that hope was certainly demonstrated, and I think that kind of, if I'm thinking of the other side of the spectrum and the counter of hope, it really was the loneliness. So the kind of the higher the sort of support from personal connections, communities, or community organizations, et cetera, the higher the hope, and really the people that seemed to be struggling to fight for that hope also were feeling like they were going at it alone.
Right. So is it fair to say that one of the things that we might be able to do as a group of concerned and supportive participants in this ecosystem is to help people, connect to those communities where they can not be lonely and be able to fortify their hope?
Absolutely. There were a number of people mentioned kind of peer group sessions, even virtual sessions during COVID. One at WorkFaith is Motivation Mondays, I believe, or setting aside time for people to just convene and realize that they're not going at it alone. So absolutely, the cultivation and facilitation of these connections so that people feel supported is so important.
Thank you. Fred, do you have anything else you want to add here before we move on with the program?
Well, looking at the clock, maybe we need to move ahead, but there were some really great questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So we might want to check those out and weave them in as time permits. But we could turn it over to Amanda now.
Okay. Yeah, the last, I'll kind of segue to introducing Amanda with United Way, but I think the last thing I wanted to, to mention here, today, I read, I would assume, Jen, that a good number of the folks that represent these four personas probably don't have a four-year college degree. I read, just for the employers in our audience today, I read last week, I think it was a LinkedIn study that showed that People who do not hold four-year degrees are something like 34% more likely to stay with their employers than those who do. And so those in our audience who are employers who worry and think about turnover, it's just an interesting statistic to contemplate. But anyway, so Jen and Fred, I really appreciate you joining us today. Jen, again, thanks for all your research. Fred, thanks for coming in with all your insight. And now I'd like to introduce to you Amanda McMillan, who serves as the CEO of the United Way of Greater Houston. She'll be facilitating the next panel and will also be sharing her own insights. As many of us know, United Way has a bold second century vision to create the opportunity for individuals and families in the greater Houston community to thrive. So welcome, Amanda, and I'll pass it on to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. And hello, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us all today. As Greg indicated, my name is Amanda McMillan. I'm President and CEO of United Way of Greater Houston. I'm excited to have Helen Stagg of Change Happens and Matt Killian of the WorkFaith Connection here with us today. Before I bring them in, I thought I would take a few minutes to share a little bit about United Way's second century vision and why it's so important for this region to come together and support families as they find good jobs that provide a family sustaining wage. We all know this, it all became even more apparent over the last year and a half, but we have so many individuals and families across Greater Houston who they're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't, as we discussed earlier, even in this discussion today, they don't have meaningful savings to cover unexpected expenses. That can be a particular challenge here on the Gulf Coast, noting that it's hurricane season right now. You think about the last year, we escaped a major hurricane, but we got hit by not just COVID, but also a winter storm. The pandemic, the economic downturn related to that only makes it harder for these families to find pathways out of what seems kind of an endless treadmill where they're not really able to get anywhere. It's a real challenge. And many of us had, and Jen, I appreciated your question at the beginning, think of a time when you felt really lonely and stressed, right? I think so many of us have been in that place financially and felt that stress that weighs on you as you try so hard to create a good life for yourself and your children. And there's that it's just that constant hum in the background. And that can affect you after a while, right? I think it's one of the reasons so many people are having mental health challenges right now. There's the isolation of the pandemic. There's also the stress and uncertainty that comes with all of this. And that can, that H word, that hope, we need that hope. And if that hope starts to fade, that can be a real challenge as well. But we also know, as we've heard today, so many of these individuals and families want a better life. They are willing to work really hard for it. They are prepared to commit to change and develop new skills. But they don't necessarily have access to better career information or what supports are out there. And the hope that there really is opportunity at the end of that journey. They do really, though, want those skills to be successful in today's changing and dynamic economy. And one of the things I love about what United Way has done over the years, and a big centerpiece of our second century vision going forward, is our Thrive Financial Stability program. For almost 15 years now, United Way of Greater Houston has supported its Thrive partners to work with the individuals and families we've been talking about today in order to create financial stability and pathways to opportunity. But we all know that the pandemic has made this path and this job all the more challenging. But United Way is embarking on a bold second century vision now, which some of you know about. It's focused on addressing the roots of the complex challenges holding people back from that opportunity and from achieving and getting down that path to financial stability. Our goal is to provide individuals and families with the opportunity and support to attain that sustainable quality of life. We will use several strategies to fulfill that vision. The foundation for this work really is to ensure that individuals and families have access to and have the support to obtain and maintain good jobs that provide family sustaining wages. That is something that will take the collective will and effort of our entire region. We all have to come together to address these challenges. Community organizations, like some you'll hear from today, they're providing wraparound supports and services that can help individuals and families really be successful in that journey. Of education partners who can provide the training and skills programs that ensure individuals can be successful in those good jobs that our region provides. And also public partners who can mobilize public supports and the benefits necessary to get where we need to get as a community. At the end of the day, Houston's businesses and employers really do need skilled and quality workers. And by working together in a more coordinated and thoughtful and intentional way, we can help deliver the talent they need. United Way and Greater Houston Partnership have been partners in this work since 2014. And it's clear to me that there's no entity that has a greater stake in the strength of Houston's talent pool than the business community. Really enjoyed all the insight and discussion around the personas that were shared today. I think they really do help us all understand what we need to do in order to help individuals get to the front door of an employer ready to work and grow in a career. These same personas also provide businesses and employers with some key insights, as well as information as to how they can recruit, hire, grow, and retain many of the residents of our region. Now, I would like to bring in two people who work closely with the people who want to create this better life for themselves and their families. First, I'd like to welcome Helen Stagg, who leads Change Happens, which serves and supports families in the 3rd Ward. And I'd also like to welcome Matt Killian, who serves as the Chief Operating Officer of the WorkFaith Connection. WorkFaith provides faith-based training and coaching for anyone who desires long-term employment and also has a focus on second chance populations. So Helen and Matt, welcome. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I know both of you have worked with individuals and families that want to have a better, more stable quality of life. I know each of you has worked with Selena's and Connie's and Fern's and Raymond's to really help them start new and more successful chapters in their lives. So I think it'd be great to hear from each of you about how you work with individuals as they go through this journey, and then what some of the new challenges are that you're seeing as a result of the pandemic. So maybe Helen, we'll start with you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Amanda. I just want to say I can think of no other organization who better understands or has a stronger sense of purpose and commitment to our community than the United Way of Greater Houston. The Second Century Vision is an exciting opportunity for individuals and families in this Greater Houston community to help them thrive. And to Peter and the Greater Houston Partnership, thank you for the privilege to participate in today's discussion and for creating Houston Back on Track, which is a transformative vision to design solutions to fit families instead of the other way around. Change Happens was founded about 31 years ago, and we are one of the largest Black-founded organizations in this Gulf Coast region. As a community-based social service organization, our mission is to empower people to help themselves. And we have this holistic approach about providing services. Audre Lorde said that, and we also found it to be true as well, that there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because people do not live single issue lives. And so even in our earliest stages of development of our organization, we understood that we needed to understand our clients and users first, then create the concepts, and from there to build an operational system. We didn't have a name for this approach back then, but we were community-based, we were a minority organization, and we well understood the struggles and despair of the people we served. Because as a minority organization, we dared to do our work every day in the midst of struggle for equity. And that kind of understanding, it gives you a unique perspective and empathy for the struggles of others. So our focus was, and it still is, on lived experiences. And from a human perspective, we try to identify what Jen referred to as those pain points, to try and uncover what are those hidden insights that we need to address the unmet needs of people and communities. And in doing that, it's helped us to design services and systems that meet the needs of those who will use them and who will benefit from them. Our approach is not a traditional approach. So we don't look at the organizations from the perspective of how to achieve our organizational goals and priorities, but rather we look at problems by first developing a deep understanding of our clients and designing the services to that. So, I could give you a real life story of a Fern, the persona number 3 that Jen outlined. So I'll just quickly tell the story of our Fern. She represents one of the major segments of our population. This real life Fern is a single mother. She had a child when she was 17 years old during her last year of high school. She's worked a series of low wage jobs. She's been on and off of public assistance, and it's been a constant struggle to get by. And along the way in this process, she began to use drugs, and she was addicted for a while. And then she made a decision to seek treatment when the custody of her son was threatened. And after a series of relapses, she successfully completed a treatment program and now volunteers and tries to help others. So she found a low-paying job as a home health aide, but she wanted more for herself and for her son. So when she came to us, one of the first steps that we have is that you meet with a case manager. And this case manager talked with our Fern about what was going on and trying to draw out the insights to better understand what she needed from the services, while at the same time trying to build empathy. And through this process, we learned about her goals, including she wanted to find a job that could provide some financial stability. She wanted a job that had opportunities to grow. She wanted to improve her parenting skills and to learn new skills and go to a community college. And she had some challenges that she recognized: a lack of self-esteem and confidence, feelings of being inadequate or lacking the skills needed to be a good parent, since she had not seen that in her own life. She needed more training and skill development. And there was also that fear that she could relapse at any time as the struggles increased. So we did look at what we could do then to help. And a series of programs. Change happens, as I mentioned, it has a holistic approach. So internally, we have programs that work with treatment services for substance misuse. We have after-school programs, enrichment programs, and all sorts of other kinds of programs that we could connect Fern with internally. So we went about connecting her to a recovery support program that would increase the likelihood that she could remain sober. That we connected her to some empowerment programs that would help to build the self-esteem and confidence that she needed, as well as connecting to parenting programs so that she learned more about parenting techniques and how to be successful in her role as a parent. We also went through a process of career exploration with her to find out what her areas of interest were. And we were able to help her enroll in a local community college. And not only enroll, we were able to help pay the tuition and the books and other supplies that she needed. Transportation needs and getting to classes. She was supplied with bus passes. She was connected to not only Change Happens After School program, but other kinds of childcare opportunities. And the case manager does routine ongoing check-ins. So once into the system that we're working, the case manager stays connected with the individual. Our Fern successfully completed the program, and we were able to directly connect her to an employment opportunities, placing her on a job with a big box organization in working in logistics. It's been almost 12 months now, and she's received 1 promotion during that time, and she is still gainfully employed. And she continues to volunteer to help others who are suffering with and from addiction. Now she's exploring an opportunity to enroll in college. So that's one of the real life examples. And what we've seen during the pandemic is that there is a growing sense of despair, some cynicism, and some mistrust. So we're working with those challenges as well as we help to prepare people post the pandemic and getting back connected to employment.
Thank you, Helen, for sharing that story. And I would say too, in terms of what we've seen over the pandemic, we through Thrive in particular, we saw some people who were already enrolled in some of these programs kind of sticking with it. But I think we had, and this is just something to understand as an employer too, right? There are, you look at these personas, they've got pressing needs. They may be more focused on survival right now, and they don't feel like they're in a headspace where they can take that step back and really take a longer term view, right? So I would just, point that out. I think that is something that we've seen quite a bit, and maybe even increasingly so for some people as this pandemic is kind of worn on. And I think that's something we're going to have to kind of continue to contend with, to help people get to a more stable place from a basic needs perspective, so that they can then be able to take that step back and maybe take a little bit longer view when it comes to either reskilling, upskilling, or looking for other job training or certification opportunities. And I know, Matt, with the WorkFaith connection, you also have a slightly different population with your services. Maybe if you can share some additional insights about some of the innovations y'all are using to support individuals through their journey right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for having us. I want to thank everybody for that. It's a great opportunity and honor. So like you mentioned before, WorkFaith provides faith-based training and coaching for anybody, including people with felonies, who desires long-term employment. Our demographic breakdown in regards to criminal background is about 40% have a felony background, which means 60% do not. What that means is that we serve a broad cross-section of people like Selena and Connie and Raymond every single day. And Fern, don't let me forget him. Many of the people that we serve are unemployed and have really struggled to find a job. Others have a job, but they want to advance or transition, but they don't know how to. So we come alongside them and we help them navigate the rough terrain. We help them get to the other side, and then we help them stabilize. That is done through a long-term relationship, typically over 2 to 3 years. We do this through a multitude of entry points to meet situational needs, but no matter where a person enters, they always have the option to enroll in additional services afterwards. So we're comprised of 5 different services that are all pointing towards providing the hope and the how. So we provide the hope through the faith-based curriculum, and we provide the how with our practical application and training. We have a job search accelerator for individuals who are re-entering the workforce. We have career navigation coaching. We have Soft Skills Academy, or the Soft Skills Academy, to help individuals keep the job once they get the job. We have a job matching service platform that offers up a bunch of different open positions from a number of employers throughout the city of Houston. And then we have a customer service training, which we're rolling out as we speak. The pandemic continues to bring about challenges for the people that we serve and our organization itself. First there weren't enough jobs, then there was too many jobs. Now we find ourselves in a really unique position where our clients are able to be a little bit more selective than before due to situational needs. And just simply because they can. They know what the market looks like, and they're leveraging those opportunities. So our clients are asking us different sets of questions when we introduce them to different employment opportunities. Like, does the employer offer flexible schedule? Are there safe office facilities? Will they provide or help with childcare? Do they offer training or additional professional development? Will they provide mental health support if I need it? While these are great questions, these are definitely unique to the situation in the pandemic. So we're having to navigate around that and address them accordingly.
Well, it's going to be interesting too, right? Because I think some of those questions, I mean, right, the nature of work is changing, I think, for so many employers, and the nature of jobs themselves are changing, right? We've had this big shift. You know, I think last year from a GHP perspective, I think the GHP data showed that we lost about 350,000 jobs. And some of those jobs aren't coming back. Some of those jobs are changing. And so that's a dynamic. And then I do think questions around flexibility and other kinds of wraparound service type support. I think some of those questions are going to persist, and it's going to be interesting to see how sticky those questions are over time. And I think with childcare, there was a really important question about that earlier I want to address. I'd say just practically speaking, from a United Way perspective, one of the things we tried to do, at least from an early childhood program perspective, we coordinate and support Bright Beginnings, which is is something we try to do to help low-income families have access to either really reduced rate or free, really high quality early childhood programming and support. We got a grant to expand that and provide scholarships for that programming over the course of the last year, and we're hoping to continue to be able to grow and expand that over time. But I think what you hear from both Helen and Matt, you've got a number of organizations that are trying to do, and we're all trying to come together and do at a larger scale with Second Century Vision, what I would effectively call a coordinated care network for social services. We know if somebody comes in and has a need around employment or needs rental assistance or food assistance, it's highly likely they've got other needs that they may or may not have identified. And I think, Helen, to your point earlier, it's so important to focus on the fact that, like, this is that person's journey. And you saw it come through in these personas, right? Each individual has their own lived experience, their own perspective, and their own needs they're bringing. And so finding the right way to provide that support and make sure they have a really good, we can help provide a lay of the land in terms of what's available to them in terms of services and support, and then provide that support as and when they're ready for it, I think is really important. So for either Helen or Matt, any additional comments or thoughts on that point?
Well, I would agree, Amanda. I think that we have to recognize that our clients have a really dynamic nature. And so even with the personas, it doesn't mean that everyone will fit in that way, because they're very dynamic. So you have to take the time and commitment to really delve into each individual as well.
Yeah, and I'll second that, Helen. One of the things that we identified with Jen and some of the other team was that there was a tremendous amount of overlap in those personas. And so you do have to take into consideration, the situation and the needs and the experiences that they've had, because they might fall into all three of those buckets or all four of them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think that kind of plays into, Susan King, this question you have around that type of commitment and involvement and time involved and how important that is to client success, right? I think we've all seen that through our organizations. It's why you hear this kind of case management navigator concept really coming up again and again. That's a critical feature of our Second Century Vision going forward, is making sure we've got navigators embedded with our agency partners throughout the greater Houston region, because that's where we've seen the most success, is that hands-on approach where you can help someone in their journey, make sure they know the resources that are available to them, and follow up with them. And you're not just providing access, you are providing hope, you are providing guidance, you are providing, depending on the program, ongoing financial coaching, and making sure some of their other needs are met so they can be successful in the long term. But it's definitely a journey, and unfortunately this pandemic is not over yet. I know it's all been very frustrating for so many of us, getting that little glimmer of hope early in the summer, and now dealing squarely with the Delta variant being front and center. But it's a definite challenge. I do think I'm watching the clocks. I think we have to move on to the next portion of our presentation. But before we close this out and turn over to Peter, Helen and Matt, just thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate your insights and perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, and thank you to Helen and Matt. They certainly brought out this notion that they're really working with the client to get the right outcome and not trying to hit a number. And I think that was one of the questions. And I think that's one of the great things you do, Amanda, is to identify and work with those organizations that have that deeper commitment to that. But one of the things I heard as you were engaging in the conversation with them were kind of two themes, one around this childcare thing. And I think we need to look at that even more, because I think the pandemic did much more damage to the childcare industry for a whole host of reasons that we now have to think about how we rebuild that. And then you talked about the fact that a lot of the things in the pandemic pulled forward a lot of things we knew were coming, like technology and automation and all these things. And so I think, I'd like to get your insights on, many respects, we're going to have to partner the way you talked about to bring the entire community together to help solve this. And so I want to give you kind of the final kind of insights to add to that, because the one piece I'll add just as we close out is this other thing, because it has not only hit the low income families that we absolutely care about and need to bring up. It has not discriminated regardless of educational attainment or other backgrounds. So I'm going to give you kind of a final opportunity to provide any insights, because it's going to be challenging for us.
It will be challenging. And one thing I know is that Houston loves a challenge. Every time this community has something that knocks us back on our heels, I'm always so inspired and humbled by how this community rallies to take care of each other. And to your point on this pandemic, absolutely not discriminating across class or educational level. We've already heard some powerful stories today and really had some insights into very meaningful resident personas. And one of the individuals who's been in our Thrive program was a health, safety, environmental professional in the energy space, lost her job in the pandemic and got frustrated, and thankfully ended up turning to the Thrive program. But the initial advice she got was, well, you just need to rely on your network to freshen up your resume and get back out there. And her initial response was, I don't have a network anymore. I don't have anyone to turn to do this. And so I think if we've learned one thing in the last year and a half, it's really that there is no one organization or 10 organizations or even 100 organizations that can tackle these challenges alone, right? It's really when we all come together in a thoughtful, intentional, coordinated way, that's where we can make a difference. That's where we can amplify each other's work. That's where we can provide more comprehensive and sustainable solutions for those who are working so hard to get from surviving to truly thriving. And this was mentioned earlier, but it's such an important point, right? I mean, think about the diverse needs depicted in these personas that we've talked about today. It's clear that no one entity has the answer here. And it's really going to take systems, because this is an ecosystem, right? It's going to take systems that are really aligned and communicative and engaged with each other. There are so many great programs out there. And one of the realities is so often we're kind of, different organizations and different initiatives, right? We're in our lane doing our thing, and we end up being a little bit siloed. So, part of what we're trying to do with Second Century Vision is bust out that sledgehammer, bring us, bust down those walls, get us all together and make sure we can kind of lock arms and move forward in a way that really provides a more integrated, comprehensive ecosystem of supports. And I think consistent messaging across those systems is going to be key. There are a lot of misconceptions around certain career paths. And because of that, there are people who might thrive in that kind of work, and they just don't think about that opportunity as something that might be a good fit for them. So I think there's a lot of work we can do There's just such a huge need for this Back on Track initiative right now. And we're so grateful that UpSkill Houston's playing such a significant role here. And we're excited about what we'll be able to do together going forward.
No, and thanks, Amanda. And as you know, it's always a privilege to have you share your thoughts. And we are proud at the Greater Houston Partnership to be a really great partner with United Way in this work. And we look forward to supporting the Second Century Vision, because it's going to be essential for us to have a vibrant, growing economy to help everybody get upskilled and reskilled into the roles that are coming. And, you know, the other final thing I think we need to be thinking about is how are we engaging with the city, the county, and the state as these billions of dollars are flowing into the state that have a lot of flexibility to actually support this. And so I think, you know, over the next several months, we're not only going to have to figure out how do we address kind of the immediate issues of the pandemic, individuals in the pandemic, but the long-term systemic issues that we know this economy is changing. So once again, Amanda, it is always a privilege. And I also want to say thank you to our audience for participating in our UpSkill Works Forum series. And of course, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsors. Please join us on September 8th for the second part of the Labor Day series that we're putting on. And it's going to really focus in on some of the conversations we've been having related to what can employers be doing focused on supporting workers and the strategies and approaches they're using in the region to support a more inclusive economic and workforce recovery. The forum will include a roundtable discussion of how employers are working with community and education partners. Much to what Amanda said, we've got to connect the dots to develop this skilled talent pool for the job openings today and helping Houstonians get back on track. Our confirmed speakers include Matt Morris, the former CEO of Stewart Title, Chase Robinson, who's the former CEO of Avalon Advisor, and Louise Wiggins, a managing director and partner at the Boston Consulting Group. More details to come, but I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you on September 8th. Have a great day. Thank you.